Hello and welcome to Warhammer Workshop. My name is Amy and I am here with my hobby best friend JF. JF, hello.
Hi, am I just your hobby best friend?
No, you're like my actual best friend, but you're also my hobby
Aw.
best friend. So,
Yeah, same for you.
yeah.
Like, seriously, so much in common.
Yeah. This is a big week. There's a lot this week.
Is
I'm
there?
yeah. This was a week that we thought we were going to have nothing and then they put out the actual like, "Hey, here's what's going to be available for pre-order." And it's a lot. And it's a lot of stuff that we've heard about recently.
Yes, that is true. There's a lot of stuff that is supposed to be. Whenever there's a preview like there was at the Nova Open, we expect there to be a certain wait time. There's a
Yeah.
cool off period. They tease you, then they walk away, and when they turn around to wink, they're so far that it takes a while for you to catch up.
Yeah.
But this time they're so close, they just take your hand and drag you in. It's
Yeah.
as far as flirtation methods, I think Games Workshop is getting a little aggressive.
So, the big one this week, I suppose, is the like we're getting the Middle Earth box. We're getting the Battle of Osgalath and all of the accompanying items. The
I
terrain
believe
set
it's
and
pronounced Osgiliath.
Osgiliath.
I
Please, yeah,
don't know.
I don't know.
There's a
Um,
lot of people with prosthetic pointy ears that are going to be very angry if we get this
I
wrong.
know. I know. I read Lord of the Rings in high school, and she let us skip the middle book to so that because it was mostly walking. She gave us
The,
she gave us the
it's,
cliff
it's
notes. It
funny,
was
the
good.
only thing I skipped was the singing.
Yeah.
I do not like to read singing,
Huh.
oddly enough.
So it's a lot of
But yeah,
stuff.
yeah, we did get that we're getting the Osgiliath core set, and we're getting a bunch of the faction sets too.
Yeah. So there's the Rohan battle host, the Mordor battle host, the Isengard battle host, and the Minas Tirith battle host. And then you get Elrond also. And ruins. And dice
Do you get
sets.
Elrond separately because he can take on any of the other faction boxes,
I think it's
or
because he is resin, is my
oh,
theory. I don't actually know that for
this
a fact, but
sounds so much more likely.
yeah. I do love that one of the things I love about the Middle Earth models is that the hero characters come in two forms. You have their on foot and you have their mounted, and I do like that. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that is very cool, and that is definitely something that you would like to see brought back in, well, in either 40K or
Yeah,
or
Sigma.
Age of Sigmar.
Mm. So
So
it's a huge week if you're into Middle Earth. Oh, and the final fate of the Witch King.
it's probably the biggest week they've had in the last 20 years, I would say. I don't
Um,
think the release
yeah.
of The Hobbit spawned that kind of interest in Lord of the Ring as a game, and this is a very interesting resurgence. Are you going to be picking up any of that?
I don't know. I not at the moment. Some of these battle hosts do look pretty good though, but not yet. Like I don't have anyone to play with, so I still have the like Song of Ice and Fire core box sitting on my shelf wrapped in plastic. So this sort of miniature is not
Mm.
necessarily my jam.
Yeah, if you
Um,
get the itch to paint some, you're already pretty much
yeah,
set.
I
That's for
have
sure.
some that I already
I
own.
I am in somewhat of the same boat as you are, and it's one of those fancy elven boats, so you know I'm in good hands. But I basically, as long as I don't have anyone to play with, I don't have this kind of pressure to push me into it.
Sure.
The same way Age of Sigmar, even though I think Age of Sigmar has models that are kind of more fun for someone like me,
Yeah.
so I do buy some of the models. I haven't played Age of Sigmar yet because I don't have this community pushing me to do it, and
Yeah.
even less so for Lord of the Rings.
I could
So
see like maybe somewhere down the line picking up a hero model. Like I have a lot of friends who are super into Lord of the Rings just like in general. So like, that's not a terrible gift. Here's a little tchotchke you put on your shelf. Please enjoy.
yeah, and back when I was more into the painting competition scene,
Yeah.
I remember that Lord of the Ring models were all the rage. They had their own kind of their own category for copyright reasons, I believe. But what made it interesting is because they were such different models, and they're very pretty, very cool looking models.
Yeah.
But none of the painters that I talked to who were painting those models, like, did you play? It's like, no, I don't play. But yeah, no, it's the same thing. Like, for some reason, like all of my local buddies would say, "Yeah, we're picking up Lord of the Rings
We're
now
taking the
because of
hobbits
this."
to Isengard. Let's
Yeah,
go.
exactly. If that were to happen, I would probably take a more serious look at this release and what it involves. Now, here's my question. This is a weird time. It's both a weird time and not a weird time,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to speculate. So on one hand, it's been a while since Lord of the Rings. They've released about 17 different new edition cuts and edits of those three movies. The same has happened to a lesser degree with The Hobbit, and all of a sudden we're getting these box sets that are definitely about the first batch, the first trilogy, the first batch of three movies.
Yeah.
Do you think this has anything to do with Amazon releasing
The Rings of Power.
the Rings of Power series? Do you think Games Workshop is going to try to give more life to this game by going into the past of the Lord of the Rings?
So I I don't know if they're necessarily going to go into the past, but I do think I think they've probably been planning a release. I mean, because the thing is, they had to have been planning this for longer than we've known about the Rings of Power, right?
Maybe that's the thing. Like, Games Workshop has had a very close relationship
That's
with
true.
the IP holders for Lord of the Rings, to the point where when they were filming the three original movies and they were first getting involved into the IP, they got privileged information and graphics and images so that they could work on the figs in advance. The Perry brothers, who were sculptors for Games Workshop at the time, got to be on set and be extras, and I believe they die in one of the many battles, which is great. I mean, if you're a fan of this is
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
the ultimate honor. But assuming that Games Workshop maintained that close of a relationship with the developers, even though it's no longer, I think it was, what was it, New Line originally. Now it's Amazon Prime. I don't know if New Line is still involved. This stuff can get complicated, but assuming they still have that kind of relationship, especially if they are developing any figs or any games or anything, obviously would have some advance notice to the series.
So here's the weird thing about that, and grain of salt because it is just stuff I read on Twitter, so you know. But basically, it's a different set of IP holders, and the reason that this is past stuff is that is the stuff that Amazon has access to. They don't have the IP, they don't have the rights to the stuff the actual Lord of the Rings. It's bonus stuff. I don't know how it works. I
It gets complicated because that would, if Amazon doesn't have access, and I could be wrong, but I'm basing this on some of my own personal interactions with that cesspool. But the moment, like, if Amazon didn't have access to the rest of the IP, then they couldn't so much as mention geographic locations or characters from any of those previous movies, and they would have to thread very carefully around anything that might look like designs borrowed from that trilogy. So it's, I don't know, but we've seen weirder things where
Yeah.
large production companies tend to loan each other properties
Yeah.
to create certain things. New Line doesn't have a distribution method, so maybe they have a deal with Amazon that, yeah, you can borrow our IP for a per diem, not per diem, but like a certain percentage,
Yeah.
and go from there.
I certainly
Anyways,
don't think that the Games Workshop timing is a coincidence.
yeah, it would.
like
It's, if you were to ask me like a year ago when they were saying, like a year ago, not even a year ago, maybe 7 months ago, when they said, "Hey, look, bears,"
Mhm.
yeah, I wouldn't have predicted, even with the Rings of Power series coming out, I wouldn't have predicted that Games Workshop would be going so hard on their Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth properties.
Yeah.
But here we are. So
I mean, they are trying to they are basically revamping everything. They're going through and updating everything. So why not? I think it's a bigger community than we think it is. I think that here in the US, we are at a disadvantage.
we very likely are, and that's one of the things that I think a lot, and I'm kind of like taking a step back from Lord of the Rings specifically, but generally speaking, I think sometimes we have a misunderstanding in especially North America, because we tend to always think of ourselves as the main market for most things.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Games Workshop, when it comes to Warhammer, and even to Lord of the Rings, I don't think we are. I don't think
No.
we're definitely not the center of the universe when it comes to these particular IPs. So, and that might explain why there's a lot of North Americans that get very huffy when things aren't catered specifically to our little, Canadian or US expectations.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, yeah, even if you look at Lord of the Rings, like that was mainly like New Zealand
Yep.
stuff. Not They didn't just film there. Like Peter Jackson's not. He's not from freaking Ohio or anything. Like I feel that as the world has gotten more and more global, we're having trouble kind of keeping up culturally,
Yeah.
because we were just for such a long period of time we were like the center of the universe.
I mean, that's a big thing you do. Like, if you go back and listen to the old Warhammer Community Podcast or the Voxcast, Stormcast that they used to do, and they would talk to designers and people that work, for GW, and they're like, "How do you get started?" And it was like, "Oh, well, I started in, retail in my local store, and then, they were like, 'Hey, you're a great painter. You want to come do heavy metal painting?'" And like here, that's not how that works at all. No one is getting noticed in their local GW store.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I sometimes will be talking to some of our local guys, like the manager at our local store. I'll have a chat with him, and just very recently, I think he had like his 10-year anniversary. So, and they
Wow.
still like flew him to Nottingham for like their annual party. They still gave him a pin, a coat, a toque. I don't know what they gave him, but like, they still do. Games Workshop does a lot more for employees than we kind of tend to realize. Like, they don't have they don't have like a Verizon company culture. They don't have a Walmart company culture. They're a lot more in touch with what their employees do. And having gone through the interview process to be a store manager myself, they rejected me again. But you know what? It's probably for the best career wise. But the questions that they ask, the expectations that they have they're not generic. They're very specific. Like, they want you to be in the hobby. They want you to like the hobby. They want you to be ambitious about your position in the hobby.
Yeah.
So it's, again, like, maybe again, maybe we're just not used to that in North America. But all that to say that, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Lord of the Rings, maybe it's popular somewhere else. Who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, they're still making figs. They're probably selling some.
Not to mention that literally every person that plays Lord of the Rings in the UK is infinitely closer together physically than anyone. Like, if you've got two players that live on opposite ends of the US versus two players that live on opposite ends of the UK, those are vastly different distances we're talking about.
Different distances, but I think that's the only way in the US that you can reach your buddy by train.
That's true.
Meanwhile, in the UK, like, you can take a train anywhere.
It's not just Lord of the Rings this week, though. Horus Heresy, surprise! It's the Demos pattern Predator battle tank.
Ah, I the this is Horse Heresy has been a pain in my ass for a little while now, because I don't have time. Like, I've painted this Contemptor Dreadnought. I
Yep.
really like it. I want to keep doing this Death Guard army. And the reason my eyes are shifting right now is because like it's on a shelf within eyesight. So, and it's just teasing me and waiting for me to paint more of my Horus Heresy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But with the League of Votann coming out very soon, as we've learned from the Nova Open, and my brother getting into League of Votann, and I having other painting responsibilities, either for this channel or for just for my team for Adepticon, I haven't had time to go back to Horus Heresy. And I keep promising myself, like, I'm not gonna buy the new cool tanks that I absolutely want. I'm not gonna buy the cool Leviathan Dreadnought that I absolutely want until I'm done with my Age of Darkness box,
Yeah.
of which I only have the one fig done right now, which is
Yeah.
extremely frustrating.
We're also getting the two upgrade kits, the weapon upgrade kits that we didn't get the first round. It's the Heavy Flamers Multi-Meltas and Plasma Cannons, and the Volkite Culverns Las Cannons and Auto Cannons.
very excited for Heavy Flamers
They all
myself.
look so good. I
I
gotta figure
I'm
that out.
really hoping that the upgrade kit format is something that is working super well for Games
Yeah.
Workshop. I desperately want them to be doing more of that.
Well, and that's the other part, right? My army is like, I mean, like you, I have a lot of other projects, but I couldn't even start my army if I wanted to because I need like chain swords and I don't have my, aesthetic upgrade kit out yet. And.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no doubt that there's third parties out there that will gladly sell you some 3D printed or resin cast chainsaws that will probably look fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you want to have to hunt those down? I
No.
mean, that's entirely up to you. And I don't know how Games Workshop is about events. Not that I don't see myself playing Horus Heresy anywhere else than my
No.
close close group of friends. But seeing how quickly they are putting out everything else for Horus Heresy,
They've got to be doing it, right?
there's no doubt in my mind that they are doing it because it's something that it's core box stuff
Right.
and like it's core book stuff. I mean, like, it's in those one of those three initial books that you can have that option. So obviously they're doing it, and they're probably doing it a lot faster than we think they are.
Mhm.
So I'm optimistic. Like
Yeah.
I think this is something that we're going to see before the end of the year,
I would
or
like
at
them to
least
just say it though. Like, you don't even have to show me. Just be like, "Yeah, melee upgrades coming. Don't worry about it."
I don't know. Games Workshop has, for a very long time, been extremely shy about sharing information. Those who haven't been in the hobby for very long may not realize that Games Workshop only started sharing information very recently, maybe in the last 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
which sounds like forever ago, but it's not. And they're getting better and better at it, but unfortunately, we keep having setbacks.
Mhm.
And a good example for
Looking
those
at
who
you,
may not
Curse
realize,
City.
like when there's a leak of a codex in PDF, Games Workshop, like it doesn't hurt Games Workshop
No.
that much. Like they're they might lose a handful of sales. It looks bad on them. It obviously affects the impact that they want to have with their release. It's frustrating for them, but it's not. It is not the damning crucial blow to the beast that some might think it
No.
is. What it does, however, and who it affects most is, well, it's content creators like us because it's harder for us to pull information and news out of Games Workshop, and it affects general public because if Games Workshop feels that every time they give information out to content creators or to the public, that information is going to be used in ways that they can't control and that they can't, that doesn't benefit them,
Yeah.
obviously they're not going to be as interested in sharing information later on. And this is why it's such a slow process for us to
Mhm.
get to the point where Games Workshop is going to say, all right, in the next 6 months, these are all the models for Horus Heresy, so you don't have to worry.
Yeah. We've also got the reference cards for Age of Darkness, which it's like your reactions, psychic powers, psychic weapons, core warlord traits, blah blah blah. Reference cards always handy if you have a memory like a Civ, like we do.
Yeah, I used to be so against reference cards because I thought like, oh, well, like, oh, they're so cheap to print and they're selling it for so much, which is still true. But at the same time, also, since then, I've converted. Like, they make gaming so much easier,
Yeah.
especially with systems that are getting a little more complex than I would normally like them to be.
We're also getting the Chaos Demons data cards that were a little delayed from the Codex, but they're here. In a big surprise, just off of the Nova Open announcement, the Gore Chosen of Drom Underworld's warband.
That is completely from left field.
So fast.
Yes, too fast.
I mean, I only just got the Witch Hunters put together, but sure. It's fine. They have their own rivals deck as all warbands do now, which is like the best way to play. It's so good. But we're also getting the Deadly Depths rivals deck for Nether Maze, which these are so fun. They're so fun. It's because I don't want to play the try hard game. And I mean,
I don't. It's
I
fun.
have every warband and I have every card that has ever been printed, and I still don't want I still don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, for someone like you, it'd be so easy to just go on the internet and just look for whatever the optimal list for whatever warband you want to play is,
Yeah.
and just play that.
Yeah, no.
That sounds terribly boring to me.
Yeah, not a big fan.
But I mean, then again, there's not a fresh box of three models for you to win at the end of a tournament. So
Mm, yeah, so I'm excited about these guys. I'm probably gonna have to wait though, because I'm so behind and I just cannot, and that's fine. Um,
yeah, at some point you got to use cool new models kind of as a means of rewarding yourself for finishing things.
yeah. Um, they did recently announce that I don't think we talked about on this show. They did recently announce the first expansion to Cursed City that is coming, and they've done cool things. Well, depending on who you ask on the internet, they've done cool things with it. Wherein there are no models in this expansion, and it's all models that they have previously released. Which, if you were a fan of the Cursed City models, you probably already bought them. I had one of them. I may or may not have acquired two more. Um, and it's fine. But it's a bunch of the vampires, and it's the Radakar, the Beast, and some Fellbats, and that's what you need to play. But also, like, there's plenty of people that are proxying, and even if you want to use Games Workshop models, if you pick up the Underworld's Warband, that's the vampire one, great, fantastic. You have enough cool, unique looking vampires that you can play through the expansion for less than whatever all the heroes are.
And you had an interesting theory as to why they got to the point where they did
Yeah.
that.
So my theory is, right, because there was that whole nonsense with the first release of Curse City that we will never find out what actually happened. I've seen a lot of theories about what happened, but we'll never know the truth. And so my theory is that they got so that basically the future of Curse City was so up in the air after that first release that obviously they already had the expansion planned and they had the models because they do make all the models in the UK. And so they, while they would have released them individually anyway afterwards, they just went ahead and released the models so that they could at least recoup the cost on those and not worry about, everything, which is smart. I mean, that's a great move.
Prudent, at the
Yeah.
very least.
So that's my
And
theory.
because Games Workshop has had, they've taken risks with manufacturing, launching new products.
Yeah.
There's a whole history about Games Workshop flirting with bankruptcy when they went all in for an almost full plastic army with the Necrons when that released, and they were building this new factory, et cetera, et cetera. So it's I can understand a company seeing a product because of unforeseen circumstances not returning what it should and trying to take measures to mitigate any potential damage
Yeah.
that they could suffer from
And
it.
I mean, I do think they would have released the models individually eventually anyway. And
Yeah.
so,
And
that's fine.
I think it's easy to sort of take a guess as to what may have been happening
Hmm.
because this sort like Curse City released at the beginning of some unprecedented times, I believe.
Yeah.
So I mean, whatever theory you come down with at the end probably revolves around the distribution and supply chain issues that kind of came from that.
Yeah. We've also got a bunch of stuff coming from Forge World. Um, as usual, a lot of gorgeous resin. Um, they really want me to play Emperor's Children.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I had a good 5 minutes where I considered it too.
yeah, you're like,
I
but
don't
what if?
paint enough purple.
Yeah.
I could paint
I
more
never
purple,
paint purple. It would be good
right?
for me. It would be a healthy exercise. So we've got Captain Lucius, the faultless blade. We have the Legion Praetor, the one in, yes, the Mach 6 studded boots, who is fabulous. The Legion Tartaros Praetor, which is the other one with the sort of beaky helmet, and all of the their Mach 6 heads and shoulder pads, as well as the white scars upgrade kits.
Yes.
So if those are your legions, good news. This is your week. It is not my week.
I mean, the thing is, like, they announce these things, but I haven't seen like I haven't seen where to order them really, and they're not in my local store. I need to investigate. And I didn't have a dog in this fight until the Death Guard stuff started popping up, and now I kind of need to figure that out and get myself some of those heads and shoulder pads.
Then we've got a bunch of Necromunda, like a whole bunch, a whole bunch. So there's the it's Gain and Vunder Gorvos, who are there's the one with the funky little alien critter that sits on their shoulder, and then another one with a
Mhm.
smoke bomb. Those are amazing models. They're outlaws for any of your gangs. Then we got Durgan Killfist, outlaw bounty hunter, who has every spike and blade that you could ever want.
His
Uh,
name's Killfist, so
yeah, he lives up to it. Axe and Hammer, the outlaw Goliath house agent, who I do have. Games Workshop was nice enough to send to me, and it is gorgeous. I haven't had a chance to put him together yet, but I will. And the Goliath champion with Renderizer.
which Games Workshop was kind enough to send me, and I will be painting that guy.
Yeah. And then the propagandist and agitator, who I also received, have built, and am in the process of painting, that should be done, if not when this episode comes out, shortly thereafter. Love these models. Had an adventure with the resin. I've come to terms with the fact that it's not the resin I hate, it's the super glue. And this is my real problem. And it was me and my mostly empty bottle of super glue accelerant as I'm dabbing it with the little tab, just trying to do it.
Mm.
So both of these models have very small little pipes and wires that I did find out you just have to glue one end and then just sort of brute force it into where it needs to be and glue the other end. And it's fine, but they're beautiful. Love them. They're very cool. Those TV screens that the propagandist is carrying have a lot of potential. Turns out the revolution will be televised and they will bring it right to you.
And I
That's
do love
great.
how they painted on their sample model. It
Mhm.
looks really cool.
It's very cool.
It's unfortunate that I'm still not into Necromunda as much as I want to be.
Every day I
The
get closer.
at the speed I'm working on it, I will eventually get to play Necromunda, and I estimate that I will play my first game about a week before they announce the next edition.
That sounds very, but you'll have models. So
I'll
that's
have
okay.
models, and hopefully the new edition will not come with a brand new set of the lack models because that would be typical.
They
That
just
would-
came in a box, so I think you're okay. I think you're okay. Um, and then there's the usual bunch of Black Library stuff.
Which is something I really want to get back into, Black Library. I've never been a super reader of
Yeah.
Black Library books, mostly because from the codexes, from the core books, like you get a lot of the fluff, and I already have so much to read and write that I don't have the time for it. But seeing that the Horse Heresy series is coming to an end, I
Yeah.
figure I should jump into that and just catch up so I'm on par with everybody else.
Yeah, I'm headed to a vacation and I have a copy of Horus Rising to take with me. So
Interesting.
that'll be good. It'll be my first Black Library model. I've never read one before. Because
I've
like you, I read the codexes.
I've read one one Black Library book called The Death of Integrity.
Mhm.
I went in really expecting so very little because the thing is, like, my prejudice has always been, oh, this is gonna be military sci-fi stories, so it's just gonna be a bunch of dudes killing other dudes and just 5-page descriptions of how a chainsword goes through a gene stealer's head, and like it's just going to be hero shot after hero shot, page after page,
Yeah.
with very, like, probably some plot. Like, I'm sure there's plot, but probably very very slim character development. Also, let's face it, like a Space Marine book just hits me as, oh, this is just going to be an absolute, like, German sausage fest. The variety between characters, like, they're all their names finished by us, and they're all very noble warriors that like to kill, like, the impure. My expectations were bottom of the barrel, and it turns out I was completely wrong. Like, even though, yes, all the characters have Roman inspired names, and it is very plot heavy. The characters themselves had a lot more flesh to them, had a lot
Sure.
more. They had very interesting separate arcs. And although it is like it's not a very diverse story, it doesn't kind of matter because it does like it's nothing that really it doesn't circle around any issues like that. Like the
True.
characters, because they're space marines, it doesn't matter what they are. They're space marines. Space marines
Right.
are space marines, and they do space marine things.
Exactly.
So this is why kind of jumping back into Horus Heresy is kind of interesting because it's about all the story we already know, but also how it stitches each of these important moments in history together into the larger the larger story that we've come to understand.
Exactly. Whew, heck of a week. A lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Very
you
exciting.
convinced me. You were right at the beginning. You said it was a heck of a week, and I may have expressed doubt, but it turns out it has been a heck of a week. And
Mhm.
next week look like it's gonna be even heavier.
It does. And I'm very excited about that. And you should be too. And until then, for myself, for JF, thank you for listening/watching. And we can't wait to talk to you next week. Bye.